first to review where we're at. I do have to touch base with Neroli just to finish up the florals from last time, okay? Because we were had quite a wide-ranging discussion, and then we were, looking at, of course, lavender and rose. Excuse me. So, and I worked out as long as I, don't spend more than 10 or 15 minutes on the aromatics that we should cover today, which are also after looking specifically from the perspective of first of Mercury. I think and Mars actually, yeah. So we'll have to be quite Mars-like, go ahead, not mess around. But yeah, so and in firstly, in that firstly means a category of aromatics that I call sweet pungent. They're like the seeds. In fact, Valerie Ann Werwood, and they're in this category here. Valerie Ann Werwood uses the term, I see I've put seedy. Of course, it can have other connotations in different contexts, but or sweet pungent, sweet pungent. And it actually, in a way, sweet pungent is better because there are other examples of sweet pungent that aren't from seeds. Especially when I think a couple of the Japanese, perhaps, like the Getu, which is Alpinia. But anyway, usually we can think of them as, especially those digestive tonics, if you like, stomachics, like from the Apiaceae family. So we've got, in that way, fennel as a key example, which does have an ancient history, as well, and symbolism going way back in the Western tradition, and cardamom is an exception, of course, among those seed essential oils because it's cardamom's in the ginger family, the Zingiberaceae family, like Getu, actually, Alpinia, I just remembered, which is called shell ginger as well. That's in the ginger family. Anywho, so also now the thing with, I think, you do find that traditionally seeds would be often attributed to Mercury. And, because if you think about it, Mercury, as we'll be looking at, it's all to do with movement, you know? I think it's more than that because there's another dimension to Mercury beyond just digestion, because it's digestion in particular and ensuring the movement in those terms, because it's when you have, spasm in the digestive system. In TCM, we refer to it as stagnation of chi, of course, which Jenny will know all about. And that literally is stuck energy. So we do need to restore movement. So these seed oils reflect that aspect of Mercury in particular. And that is partly I think, the result of that pungent quality in their fragrance energetics, together with the sweet nature, the sweet fragrance energy, will help target that pungency towards the earth element, which is the taste of and which is sweet, and even the fragrance in a way kind of points to the stomach and spleen pancreas. So and that benefiting the large intestines, the small intestines, which, by the way, the small intestines in particular, or the intestines generally, being ruled by Virgo, or in medical astrology, closely related to Virgo as well. So there's another connection there with Mercury. But I think the other dimension, talking about the medical astrology associations, is between Mercury and the nervous system. And that's really more the lavender connection. Now, I know we looked at lavender under the moon, but if you look back, you'll see that it's also got aspects to it that are Mercury, in the sense of lavender's ability to harmonize the nervous system in particular, and even going further, to be directly attributed or associated with Virgo, for example, by Culpeper. And if you do think, I mean, it is in a way the supreme aromatic of, we might think of hygiene. Hygiene more than just cleanliness, like even sleep hygiene. And I think it's that harmony of living, the domestic or self-care, which is also very sixth house, by the way, in terms of the houses. Whereas coming back to Mercury, that's like very third house. And but so we'll look at Mercury, of course, in a moment, but bear those connections in mind, because that's one thing about Mercury that is different to most of the other planets, apart from Venus, is that it rules two signs, both obviously Gemini, which is not mentioned here, and Virgo. And Gemini is definitely the third house nature of Mercury, and that ability to communicate, which interestingly, actually, both lavender and fennel help us do. And I think I've referred to this in Healing the Spirit. Lavender, when you're kind of overwhelmed with emotion, or yeah, like it is, you're tongue tied because, it can almost be a good thing if you meet someone who, you've venerated for the first time. You meet someone, a star of some kind, music or whatever, and you're almost like tongue tied. And it's that kind of, but usually it's, more something that is in the way of being able to express yourself. And lavender helps that. Whereas fennel as well, I think is kind of, well, we'll see, that has that aspect to it as well. Yeah. Um, in that way, I suppose you can also link it to the Vishuddha chakra, the throat chakra, self-expression. Um, then the spices we'll look at under Mars and Aries, for obvious reasons. Well, their fiery energy we think of in being spicy, relating to spice, and that indeed I'd put god of fire, black pepper, famous in Ayurvedic medicine in particular for stoking the digestive fire that's called Agni, 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 so therapeutically that is an important part of their nature, including, in fact, their antioxidant nature. But interestingly, I think energetically, yes, hot. So good in particular for people who need that Mars quality in their body, even of which is helping the arterial circulation for people who've got cold hands and feet. These are the best oils for that, promoting the heart yang in that way, and that's their Mars aspect. And but I think there's another interesting side though, which even despite being hot and good for people who need that warm, hot energy of Mars and improved circulation, they're nevertheless anti-inflammatory in nature. They're very cell protective as well. And I think that's reflected in this idea of being the elixir of immortality. Yeah, so incredible medicines, really, even though, we just think of them as obviously their obvious culinary use as spices. Now, okay, so that's an overview there, but let's just head back and to where we left off after Rose and make steady pace with neroli. I've called that the joyful heart, and it is famous as an antidepressant, essential oil for sure. And of course, Citrus aurantium variety Amara. It's a kind of a bitter orange, which also yields an essential oil from the peel, similar to bergamot and wonderful for natural perfumery. Well, of course, like neroli itself, yeah. And well, the thing about the flower, as opposed to the rind or the peel, which is actually a combination of the flavado and albedo, in those terms. But the actual flower, that its chemistry is more similar to, for example, it's with the being rich in monoterpenols like Rose Otto, which is also rich in monoterpenols, linalool, of course, which is also is very ubiquitous, and you find it in lots of different essential oils, including lavender. And of course, there's tons of research just about linalool, which is really inherently relaxing, really, and sleep promoting, as well as having other antioxidant cell protective benefits too. Um, it does have you can see it does have limonene, 11 to 18 from my compiling, which is also where you find it in the rind as well, in the peel oil. Yeah. And you can get some, sometimes it's interesting with the beta pinene, which also has some wonderful research there too. And I'm thinking, is it cistus is beta pinene as well? I think cistus ladaniferus, perhaps, where there's beta pinene, but it would give it that some neroli smell a bit more like fresh, more similar to petitgrain. They probably have more like beta pinene, just has that more fresh quality. And then the esters, they're the ones that really give it extra sweetness as well and more ability to relax. Yeah. Uh, and interestingly, even some sesquiterpenols, which are heavier compounds, but it does have that richness to it, you know. It does, you can tell why, and a certain tenacity to it. Yeah, so interesting, I think, chemistry. Um, so yeah, in fact, as it says, nerolidol, that's a characteristic ingredient. And then there are trace compounds, probably more easy to capture when you make an absolute, but of course the essential oil is preferred, unless the absolute it can be alcohol extracted. But yeah, like methylantranolate, get that as well in like ylang ylang. But the fragrance of these compounds so powerful. Like you could have probably, without looking exactly, but literally parts per million, and still adds to the aroma. And I told you, like I was doing this class with Dr. Prabodh. Well, it's just before this one on Saturday morning, but he mentioned, there's like can be millions of trace compounds. You wouldn't think so in one essential oil. And yeah, so some of them have this really powerful aroma, even though they're small in quantity. Okay, so yeah, that's just the chemistry. Well, that's of the sweet orange, actually, rich in limonene, just to compare. But other trace compounds that will give it that orangey fragrance, of course. And yeah, so this is the original genetic pool of the citrus genus came from Southeast Asia 4,000 years ago. So not as long as you might think in evolution terms. Like all these conifers have been around millions of years, so it's pretty recent. And Citrus halimi, recently discovered taxon, are the parent species of all citrus, while Citrus maxima was probably its first ancestor. So, in other words, the pomelo, and I've got some pomelo essential oil, funnily enough, which I got in Japan, literally by accident, because I was traveling. I was traveling back from Kyoto to Tokyo, and I had a class coming up in a couple of days, so I had to get back to Tokyo. And Reiko had given me the name of the town, but the town was part of Tokyo, or there was a station with the same name. And so, about even before we got to Tokyo, they announced this name, and I got off the train, and that was wrong. The train carried on. So I had to get a later train to Tokyo. But in the meantime, I was in the station and I actually went into I didn't know where I was initially, and I went into the tourist office, and these two ladies were so nice and helpful. Anyway, and I was so helpful that afterwards I wandered around and I was in a department store and I bought them each a bottle of lavender. There wasn't much, this tiny little bottle. I took it back as a little gift, Japanese like gifts, while I was waiting for the train the next one to Tokyo. But while I was there, I discovered there was one oil that was Citrus maxima, pomelo. Oh, pomelo. I'd never encountered that, so that's where I got this pomelo oil, you know. So it's interesting, and it's I've got it over there, but it's like grapefruit, a bit like grapefruit, and you can see it looks a bit like grapefruit. Yeah, so there's ancient literature. Orange was mentioned by the first a renowned classical Chinese poet, was one of the first, even in the 2nd century BC, referring to citrus in a fu, or what is like a rhapsody. And the first monograph, much later in 1178 AD, describing the medicinal benefits of 27 varieties. The character is composed of two parts, one part meaning plant or tree, and the other meaning lucky. And it is a symbol. It's an auspicious plant. You give it at New Year for wishing your friend or relative good fortune. And in Chinese herbal medicine, Jenny will know how often these two botanicals, peel of orange, mandarin, zherka, chenpi, and you get the mature one or the immature varieties, two different varieties actually, especially always included for many uh, formulas for digestive problems, especially where you get literally, as I put here, that, well, stagnation of qi really, it means stuck qi, and it can be, due to tension and, of course, improper diet. So, yeah, it's a really major, important, even in the Western herbal medicine, orange peel, yeah, it's a very important. And The Arab physicians, it was important. They were, for example, Ibn al-Batharis, botanist physician, described it in the 12th century, including even the extraction of the essential oil. So there you have a very ancient, early example of distillation, uh, a description of it there in this Kitab al-Filhaha, Book of Agriculture. It was one of the key things, in this traditional Arab pharmacy was having syrups and juleps and rose water as well as orange blossom water were important foundations in which helped ensure people took the remedy, it helped compliance. And the same as with its use for ointments, as John Gerard noticed as well in his book. Orange trees were evergreen and they bear flowers or fruit with numerous seeds. So, yeah, very, I think the citrus trees are, as some others, associated with fertility, but also purity, the white flower, chastity, eternal love. So it had a certain dual nature: white flowers, virginity, the fruit, fecundity, a little bit like the white and red rose symbolism. In terms of how neroli, as a famous fragrance, as essential oil, in the late 16th century, Marie Anne de la Tremoille, Princess of Nerola, of course that's where the name came from, introduced the essence, which caught on, as has happened in other occasions, as a fashionable fragrance. And so, that's how it acquired the name and also became important in some of the earliest colognes, which started out as what was called spirituous water, including, for example, aqua mirabilis, which was based also on these other citrus like cedrat, which is that's a leaf oil, I think, isn't it? Cedrat of Citrus medica, I think, or is it Citrus medica peel? But anyway, cedrat, lemon, orange blossom, melissa, and the interesting thing is that they would wear it as a fragrance, but it would be the kind of tonic that you could splash on you and then drink as well, because that's how these early, but of course there were no like synthetics then, but these aromatics well, we know that they can be used as medicines and perfumes, but they really were combined in that way. These early spirituous waters. And it did indeed become famous for these benefits to the digestion in particular. So before his death, the recipe, the secret formula, was passed on to Farina and a new factory in Cologne. So in 1789, he introduced his own, what was called aqua. And that was the beginning of what we now call eau de cologne. That was the original eau de cologne. And then, of course, this famous one as well, the eau de cologne 4711, which is a further manifestation development of the product. Bonaparte, apparently, who didn't like heavy fragrance, commissioned his own aqua, the Eau Admirable dite de Cologne. And he would use it every day, apparently. One of the most widely used oils in perfumery, more than 10% even, can feature neroli. Amazing. Maybe I don't know if that's when I made these notes. It might be less now with synthetics always seem to be growing, but anyway, still very high proportion. Um, and Yeah, so flowers collected in April, for example, Tunisia is a major producer. The harvest lasts 2 to 3 weeks. The flowers are fragile, so they have to be stored properly and transported. Otherwise, you can get off notes. Not such a low yield as you might think, but of course, you need a lot of flowers, not such a low yield as certainly as rose. And here working especially from the TCM perspective, it's cooling to the heart energy. So it's very good for people who are a bit like people with lavender, who are emotionally intense, easily alarmed, hypersensitive. Yeah. And you can get easily emotionally exhausted. So that kind of depression, including clinical depression where you want to really relax, or anxious depression as well. So it's good in both those ways. There's a wood element as well side to it from the TCM point of view to do again with that stuck chi energy, which can go hand in hand with unexpressed anger, so it can be good for helping release feelings of unconscious resentment, because otherwise those kind of feelings, of course, can, turn inward on oneself and cause depression. So it instills comfort and strength, but also assists in releasing repressed emotions. Yeah, so it does work, and I think in a very deep way, relaxing and reuniting our solar and lunar, conscious and subconscious, described as both sensual and spiritual, helps to reestablish the link between a disconnected mind and body. I think that's true. All those florals particularly do that, and especially the ones that we'll look at later under Pluto that you can describe as being more like sultry, the sultry aromatics. Um, so I'm just playing with this window a bit, just to move that there. Whoops. Um, Dear, I can't seem to move it. Sorry. Um, oh well, I'll leave it for the moment. So, yeah, and especially as I said, where these emotions have been pushed below consciousness. And I think often I've seen, especially where neroli might be used in massage application, it can really, help a release, really. I put gradual release. Sometimes in a session, especially combined with massage, when you use oils like neroli, these floral oils, you do get a release. I often find in sometimes in some clients. Um,
Gabriel, can I ask you
yeah,
a question about
yeah,
that?
yeah,
When you
sure.
use it, when you use it in a massage oil, do you use it for the whole treatment? Do you use it for full body, or do you use it like would you use it for like over the heart or maybe down the heart channel, or I don't know, do you use it like I'm assuming you're diluting it down for massage, but like is it I don't know, how are you how
Well, there's three main. I think there's three main kind of uh, administration in terms of topical application, full body, and I've done a lot of that, a lot of full body work, massage application there, where you would have 1, 2, or 3%. You know, if it was somebody who was more young or elderly, pregnant, 1%, or 2 or 3%. So that would be a blend where you would give a full treatment, you know, including like the approach I've often taught where I call meridian massage and aromatic acupressure. A little bit, you know, what my own approach, well, what we've always taught, incorporating the points. So in that way as well, in terms of more local application, so, you know, yeah, that's another big part of what I've always practiced and taught is making up all different kind of things for local application that range between a gel, a cream towards an ointment. Ointment not having any water phase, so it lasts longer. And then there, well, it depends because for local application, if it's an inflammatory skin condition, right, you might even go below 0.05% concentration, like less than 0.5%,
Yeah.
you know, depending. But it would be combined with other medicinals in a salve that would be of a herb, you know, calendula, uh, in like calendula infused oil, hypericum infused oil, but with the essential oil component being less than, as I said, 0.04%, for example. Whereas at the opposite end of the scale, if someone's got joint pain in winter, let's say, and it's cold and cramping, then you're going to need maybe what would be, I suppose, well, something like 8 or 10% concentration even of essential oil. 8% is usually I would go up to in that situation. Which if you compare it to 0.04, it's quite a big range, isn't it? I guess if you think about it. Is it 20 times more or 200? I don't know. I have to, uh, but anyway, you know, so that's local. And then
Mhm.
also part of local is treating, you know, specific points as well, which you can make up something for the person to apply themselves. But what I do, like what I just did yesterday or the day before, I did 3 what I call elixirs,
Mhm.
okay? And I put them in a blue dropper bottle, a 50 ml blue dropper bottle, and well, I've sent one to Sue actually because I promised her one at the reading, and your one has got it'll come in the post in a couple of days. Yours has got these oils from Japan.
Mm.
Yeah, I've got the recipe. It has it on the label, but in that I put that being like an elixir. It's it's 40 it's 50 ml bottle and 45 ml are list 4 different base oils. 4 different that's like the base, the excipient base. 4 different base oils. So I put in this is what I usually do like on this level of there's apricot kernel, almond oil, and a couple of others, and then also 5 ml of vegetable glycerin, which kind of adds to the softness of it. And then there's 5 ml altogether of essential oil, so it's actually 10%. But it would be more for local application. So you could put it anywhere really, your wrist, the back of your neck, your hair, but not your whole body, of course, because, yeah, well, you could do, but I mean, you know, that would be a bit more.
Are
But
you using it ritualistically at that point? Like if you're using it for a ritual, are if it's for astrology, or
no,
if you're
it's
doing it
really
for
just per, well, the way that it's really, um, it's really just for however the person wants to use it, really. You know, but I, the one, it depends on one that I made was specific for somebody who has had a really lot of digestive problems, okay, and also grief. So for them, I would say, it's more like they can wear it for emotional support, but also rub it on their belly because, and that's what these oils we'll be looking at in a minute, like with fennel and cardamom. And there's even research to show, like caraway essential oil is absorbed into the intestines. So you can rub it on in her case, also her tummy very much because it'll promote digestion in a, gentle way, in a subtle way, but also just give that kind of comfort. That one is like a more comforting one. But um and then I made another one that turned out I was just kind of intuitively choosing, Melissa, and it's somebody I'd done an in-depth diagnosis on, so I knew the underlying TCM imbalance. But otherwise, it ended up, funnily enough, I called it grass because, but it made sense for her because I knew that for her, what really relaxed her is nature and being reminded of nature. And when I made this fragrance, I thought, oh my God, it smells like grass, which interestingly is like the holy grail of perfumery. It's like, because it's considered very hard to do. I'm kind of exaggerating, to me it smelt like grass. It probably wouldn't to anyone else, but it had that quality to it. And partly, interestingly, that was the helichrysum in it. Because if you think there's one thing about grass, I mean, fresh grass, yes, but when grass kind of you get those coumarin notes, which is more when maybe that's when the grass is starting to dry a little bit. But it makes it more retentive. So even on the smelling strip, even when it's evaporated and you smell it, it's kind of like, as if you'd like, when you were a kid and all kind of running around in the grass, so all your clothes get all these skids on them, and your clothes smell like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like that somehow. Anyway, so so that's really in that instance, the person can just use it how they like. Could even you put it in the bath because that's a good way. It's much better to add essential oil that's diluted in a vegetable oil or seed oils like the ones I just mentioned straight into the bath rather than pure essential oil because the pure essential oil won't dissolve in the water. Okay, so the oil won't, the thing is, the vegetable oil won't dissolve into the water either, but the essential oil's already dissolved into the vegetable oil, so it won't sting you. I mean, the ideal is something called soluble, which is a kind of lesser thin kind of you can get it, for example, from Aromatics International. It's a little bit expensive, but it's a bit like bath oil. I used to be able to, when we had classes and we made bath oil, I used to be able to get the base that was apparently organic, but that's another option. But anyway, but with this, the good thing is what I was mentioning though, with this elixir, if it's based in oil, that's fine for the bath. That's another place you can use it. And even like not everyone here in America I know takes a bath though, but I find as long as in here I can take a bath, but I tell you what, where I live, the water is so expensive that I actually take a shower, but I put the plug in, so and then oil at the bottom, so I can still get all the benefits and absorb through my feet, of essential oil. So that's another way you can use them in the shower too. And then, of course, diffusion. But once you can't, of course, you need pure oil for doing diffusion or. Anyhow, so there we go. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll get back then to,
Thank you.
but it's always good to touch base with how one uses, of course, in particular, or the different ways. And I do think that you get a lot of benefit if for anyone, it's good if they can use, if they're working with a blend or a particular essential oil, it's quite good if they, I think, can use it in two or three different ways. You know, you get a certain synergy like that is ideal. Okay. Um, I don't know if you heard that. God, there's nobody ever drives by here, but because it's Memorial Weekend, I just some rowdy chaps shouting out. Hopefully you didn't hear that. Nothing rude. I didn't know what they said. Anywho, okay. Yeah, so Neroli, as I was saying, really it's very healing of, deep emotional wounding in particular, I would say, And so this is what I'm emphasizing here. And what it is, the moon is where we hold that in very many ways, that, any emotional wounding that in the actual musculature of our body, which is the moon is also representing, or it's that connection between the psyche and our musculature. But yeah, so it's sweet, fruity, floral, cool. So again, we're just finishing with the moon, comforting, supporting the yin in particular, which is also very lunar in nature. Anxiety in particular, anxious depression. Um, yeah, well, regular use, ideally, of course. And then Jupiter, I think, with the citrus, because it does bring in a feeling of positivity, and I think that's part of its action on the liver too, to release that any pent up, stuck energy that can be a bit oppressive to the soul. And so that positivity, comes through, I think, in some of its symbolism, but also, and its energetic action as well in that way. Good. Okay. So let's move right on to, well, first we've got to, just before we look at these, let's just have a look now. Oh, sorry, wrong ones. There we are. Um, Mercury in the astrology notes. And I think that I've mentioned this before, but the symbol or glyph of Mercury, containing, you can see the crescent, you've got the crescent of the soul, the circle of spirit, and the cross of matter. Similar to Venus, but with the the crescent soul crowning the circle of spirit. Well, I think first, because it has one thing about it having all three, I think is that there is an objectivity there, which I think is important for what Mercury is about, because I think it is that you can also think of it. I suppose it's primarily linked to the sun, the solar principle. Because I mean, if you look at the glyph, it's the sun that's uniting these the desire of the soul. In this instance, I think that's almost like that kind of guides what you're interested in, you know, in terms of the intellect. And I suppose the solar aspect is what you identify with in a way, how you see yourself being in the world. And then dominating the cross is, I suppose, the practice as well. The Mercury is also about practice and the practical part. That's really, I think, more than anything reflected in Virgo. But I think with having all three of these, it does reflect that objective nature. But coming back to what I was saying, part of the importance of the solar and the extension of it being, in a way, an extension of the spirit, is it's always never more than 45 degrees are located in the chart from the sun, you know. Yeah, so I think, and because it's the sun is more in that way, in contrast to the moon, which is more, we've seen instinctive, emotional, rhythmic. The sun in that way has a kind of a certain constancy, reflected in what is more like your vision and your overall character, how you see your identity. But there's more of a rational, I suppose, element to the sun more than the moon. So I think in that way, it's a little bit the Mercury, although it's neutral and it can appreciate our mercurial nature can appreciate beauty in the arts. It's still more, I think orientated towards the objective and the rational, but also communication, of course, as well. It's also the planet of communication. But here, as I've said, the spirit mediates between the soul and the body. I'm mentioning it as a neutralizing, synthesizing force among the planets, governing the mind, intellect, analysis. But I've said also, especially by way of Virgo, skill, dexterity, like brain, hand coordination. Yeah, versatility. If you think about Mercury, if you think about Gemini, that's well, they're both mutable, actually, aren't they? Mercury is mutable air, that having that ability, especially verbal versatility, if you like, as well as ambiguity, for example, but um, but communication. Whereas the Virgo aspect is very much putting that all into practice and refining it and making it directly applicable in that way, and the dexterity that goes with it, I think, and that's more like the sixth house. But Mercury certainly reflects that talkative, inquisitive aspect, can reflect a nervousness, indecision, um, and a certain, or it could be, I don't know, to say unreliable. I mean, that's a bit damning just on one planet. I'm not sure if it goes that far, but indecisive though. I mean, I've got Moon square Mercury, and not these days, but I've had terrible indecision in my life before, so I'm sure that was part of that dynamic. Mercury governs the nervous system, as I've said. Yeah, especially like motor nerves, cognition. Remember the moon as a whole, going back to the moon, that's the body as a whole, and especially the autonomic processes. But Mercury is, part of that, of course, central to that too, and kind of reflects that, I think, basic functioning of the central nervous system, the motor nerves, as well as cognition, perception, and memory in the chart, if you look. Not the only factor, but, an important one, I think, an important one in that way. Yeah. So, in a secondary way, it has this through Gemini. It's also in terms of health or medical astrology associated with thyroid, located, of course, at the throat, governing our blood sugar use and so forth, and that endocrine gland governing an important part of our metabolism. I know. I was going to add, though, I was just trying to think something that went through my mind, of course. The other thing, before we go any further, I think, is to recognize again the importance of the gut-brain connection as well, which I think that Mercury will obviously reflect as well, governing the intestines, but also the nervous system, right? And the that important connection, especially, well, if you think like the main one of the most, if not the most important neurochemical in the brain, that is like the chemical of consciousness, serotonin, is actually produced from tryptophan in the gut, for example. And then there's so much research about how the microbiome is important for the brain and neuroprotection and everything. So yeah, the gut-brain connection, it's central here, and I think, so important to health and well-being, and Mercury really reflects that directly, both of those, so much so. Yeah, and so in terms of the some of the associations traditionally, directly speaking, especially those plants considered to have these finely divided leaves, the umbelliferous, what used to be called the Umbelliferae family, now the Apiaceae family, of course. Yeah, so it was also, even in terms of the doctrine of signatures, almost like that when you look at the leaves, and the flower heads, that's a fineness to this family, and a bit like tracery, sort of that quality that is very, reminds one of Mercury, as well as all their ability to move move the stomach chi and so forth. Also, medicinal plants affecting the brain, nervous system, or speech. Yeah, lavender, lily of the valley, marjoram. Marjoram, of course, important again for digestion. Elecampane, well, it is also, elecampane is very much a respiratory oil. I mean, sorry, herb. You do get an oil, but it's toxic. I don't think I've ever smelt it, because I know it's rich in these, well, I mentioned coumarins, but they can be very skin irritant, actually. That's the problem with it, and that's one reason elecampane essential oil is rare, and not used, considered toxic to, considered a skin sensitizer and pro-allergen to the skin. But otherwise, it's a great herb for the lungs, especially for mucousy conditions, cough, bronchitis, what we call phlegm cold. And yeah, Mercury does also, I think, secondarily work, reflect respiratory system, that are part of the body, and that rhythmic processes as well of breathing. So elecampane, I think, comes in there. Horehound is similar. And mandrake, I'm not sure, but mandrake would be more mercury in the sense it's neurotoxic, in a negative way. But it's a magical plant, and it can certainly magic to the extent that, it could summon up entities that could be like, take a message for you, that kind of thing, because that's Mercury, that ancient symbol of the messenger as well. So mandrake is more like a kind of on a magical level. Culpepper, again, caraway, fennel, specifically Virgo, as we'll see. Lavender, wonderfully balancing to the nervous system. Marjoram as well. That's a fantastic aromatic for, again, thinking about the gut-brain connection, because it's so good for both nervous system and oregano, or the oreganum. It's got that. it's that really earth element quality of sweetness for the digestion, but also for the nervous system. Myrtle. Myrtle's a bit more, a tiny bit more stimulating, but very balancing. And that's got wonderful ancient symbolism as well really for a bit like rosemary for marking occasions as well, for ennobling the soul, in that way. Um, Savory, well, that's we're getting more a little bit Mars energy here because savory is a bit like time. But again, digestion, like these other ones as well, carrot, dill, licorice, which is in a lot of Chinese medicine remedies, all kinds. Parsley, the essential oil can be toxic, but the herb, and of course, parsley is very rich. And there's a specific compound. Well, it's good, very concentrated in iron, even parsley. The essential oil again is not recommended because it's has a compound called apiol, which is a carcinogen. So we don't use the parsley essential oil. But valerian, I love valerian essential oil. And it's a wonderful alternative as well to like spikenard, which is threatened. And I was given some lovely, beautiful, because if you think of valerian herb, it's quite like musty and bitter, lots of people don't like it and people have different responses to it. Not even everybody finds it necessarily relaxing, but it's definitely mercury working on the nervous system. But check out, if you get a chance, the essential oil, because I was given some by Andrew Chevalier was distilled in Colombia. Very nice. I thought, wow, what a great analog or alternative, um, for nardostasis, which is the spikenard. Now, yeah, Sue, can you add anything? I've kind of galloped through everything I could think of with Mercury. Any other thoughts come to mind for you about Mercury?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything.
Do you find that when you do charts, like people who might be good at languages or public speaking or often have a pronounced maybe Mercury? Yeah,
Yeah,
they tend.
Mercury and Gemini for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions at all from anyone about Jackie? Did you have one?
Yeah, I've got a question on it's just that last thing you spoke about there with valerian essential oil. It's an alternative for spikenard. So shares, I've used valerian in the herbal format, but I have never used it in the essential oil. So does it share pretty much the attributes of spikenard?
Um, I think, well, oh yeah, the valerian essential oil. I think it will in a certain fragrance way. It does.
Mhm.
That definitely. I was surprised because it does come from the same family.
And it
Um,
does the same as the herb. The essential oil is, yeah. So two
well, one
questions.
thing I think, well, it's funny. I think similar. I think they're all quite similar. Um, Now, I think, well, one thing is, of course, valerian as a herb, that's a thing in its own right in a way, because there's so much like research and, it's so widely used. But interestingly, with, I think, the valerian herb, like I said, and this is often written about, but it can be, it can affect people in sometimes rather than making you sleep, it can wake some people, it can make them wake, feel more awake, even like stimulate them a bit. And that can sometimes maybe be exactly what the source is. But overall, it is not, having said that, it's got a lot of good properties that are neuroprotective. The herb does, in a way, and together with it, being overall well known as promoting sleep. Although I think usually it's good maybe to combine with other herbs like um, Roman chamomile, for example, and another one is like California poppy, which those you can also take as a tincture. Now, when it comes to, I think, to be fair, when it comes to the essential oil of valerian, it's still a bit new, like there hasn't been a lot of use. But I think that it will have, I'm sure it will, I'm sure it helps to promote sleep because it's got that kind of heavy, it's actually nicer smelling than the valerian herb.
Okay, that's
The
good.
essential oil, or the one he sent me, it's not as like, it's a bit acrid, A lot of,
Mm,
it does put people off sometimes, the herb.
mm,
But the essential oil seemed quite sort of sweeter than I expected and earthy and similar. So I think it would be similar in that way to spikenard oil as well,
mm,
kind of being able to relax the chi of the heart, in that way for people also maybe having high blood pressure or palpitations.
okay.
But it's still a bit new to see, I
Okay.
think,
Okay.
the research and everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank
But
you.
good question though. Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question about why is it connected to oregano?
Which one? Oh,
Mercury.
well, I think just again, I think because the oregano, especially with the digestion, being quite digestive in that way, and for the stomach and the intestines in particular. Yeah. Now, let's see here. Oh, I know. Just got to open it again. Um, oh, there it is. Okay, thanks. Great. Okay, so yeah, so we've got these two groups to look at, and we'll have a look at Mars. Maybe what we'll do, let's do fennel and cardamom, and then maybe have a brief break, and then we can look at Mars and the spices. Hopefully, we'll get through to the end of the spices. But let's see, fennel. Actually, so the position of it, by the way, with these seeds, I put between, well, essentially, if you can see the arrow, kind of between fire and earth, you see, fire and earth, because earth is especially digestion, and that's sweet, the sweet aspect, what you think sweet, pungent, and the pungency is more the fire, which is moving the energy. So it has both of these in a way. And yeah, of course, that virtue, that means it's kind of highest expression or perfection, adaptability. And I think one thing that, in a way, if you think conditions that involve the nervous system, um, can can be require benefit from comforting, because obviously getting with the nervous system in dysregulation, gets stress and tension. You get kind of wired up. And so the comforting quality. And the interesting thing is, I think that aniseed as well, they do actually have this comforting, like tummy comforting quality. I mean, if you think, excuse me, what do we give babies? Gripe water, like dill. And in going back to medieval times, they were called the classic combination, including fennel, is the four hot seeds. You know, they're always considered, generally all of them, having a warm, maybe not hot, but because I think hot is more, I think of the spice oils that we'll be coming to, especially like cinnamon and so forth, but warming. And I love making, often bought the fennel root as well. Makes great with celery, makes great soup. Celery and fennel soup. Great for the stomach and the joints as well. So Funiculum vulgare and beautiful umbelliferous flower heads. And of course, the seeds dry naturally, ideal for infusion. And it really evokes that in terms of the taste energies, the sweet taste in being a combination of earth and water. There are two varieties of fennel. There's also bitter fennel. That's it is available. I forget what compound is in it that makes it less desirable. Bitter fennel. It's generally only sweet fennel you find available. I don't think I've smelt bitter fennel. But is it dew, Joan? I can't remember. But anyway, the use stretches back to antiquity. In different, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, recognized by the Greeks for its diuretic properties, but also, and it reflected in its name Marino, to grow thin, from marathon. That could actually reflect it's considered good for endurance as well, though. Yeah, with an equal reputation. So for promoting strength and longevity, yeah, here we go. Athletes training. So that was eaten for athletes training for the Olympic Games, and a common after meal seed cake. It became named funiculum, meaning hay-like, because of its sweet. There you go again, dried grass aroma. A bit like helichrysum. But of course, you go to Indian restaurant, the more you see them. That's one thing I miss about England. You got Indian restaurants everywhere. You do have some here, but it's different here. Like where you see, California, you see the Mexican restaurants. If you're in England, it's the Indian you see everywhere. That's the main difference. But at the end of the meal, when you're, checking out and you're giving them your credit card, there's a little bowl there, isn't there, of fennel seeds together, usually together with some other little kind of candied licorice tasting, hopefully not with artificial color. But anyway, I still take a teaspoonful because, of course, they're great, aren't they? As a digestive or carminative as well as a tonic. And interesting. Well, I think partly the connection with eyesight is the shape of the seeds. But I did read some interesting research which showed it is beneficial actually in helping to prevent glaucoma. So some of these things that are part of the doctrine of signatures, you actually incredibly find research to back up that connection even. So as I've said, Culpeper linked it to Mercury under Virgo And we know Virgo very much linked to the intestines, very practical, productive. Interestingly, we talk about in TCM, we say the intestines are responsible for sorting the pure from the impure. And that's very much, in a way, what our Virgo ability is about. Is selecting the best of us and the best of, that can serve us or the community. I kind of really are just saying here that that connection with fennel and the earth element in particular, which interestingly, as I said, the earth element in TCM actually governs the intellect, That's the earth element being the element that also governs digestion through the spleen, pancreas, and stomach. But it houses the spleen, as we say, houses the intellect. So that's interesting that the earth element is connected to the mind and the thinking. And even in if you think of the solar plexus or the the Manipura chakra, which is your navel or chakra or your solar plexus chakra, that also governs the mind, actually, So there's a lot of connections between, interestingly, again, the harmonious functioning of your gut and intestines and thinking clearly and having, a strong Mercury in that way. Okay. And fennel, again, helps that connection. But psychologically, especially, and this is a an earth element kind of symptom or sign, if you like, what we call overthinking. Jenny will know all about this because it's a big thing in TCM. When the earth element is weak, funnily enough, all your chi goes up to your head, and you start to overthink and worry, mental anxiety, really. And fennel is really good, especially when, when we get stuck energy in the intestines, somehow, we feel a bit blocked inside. So that comes out through finding it difficult to articulate, express oneself. And the more they build up, then tension can even affect the bowels. And there's this idea that those thoughts that we couldn't express, those emotions that we push below consciousness, can accumulate in the form of spasm and gas, So you end up, expressing yourself, well, in a way, through your bottom, you could say. That's a kind of old saying in that regard about fennel. But it's about being able to find your voice again, And that goes a lot with freeing up that stuck energy, especially that's connected to that sense of self-worth and security that's inherent to the solar plexus. So Mercury very much being sweet, pungent, and warm, encouraging, as I've said there, to speak one to speak one's truth. And Virgo in particular, that idea of sorting the pure from the impure, good for decision making as well, in that way, together with the gallbladder function. So cardamom. So this is quite a different kind of sweet, pungent aromatic, of course, from the ginger family, the seed pods as well, growing close to the ground, actually, of Eleutheria cardamomum. I do love it when you can get photos and you can see it in its natural here, South Indian habitat. God, I fancy a curry looking at that, don't know. Thinking of India, But, and of course, it adds a lot to, and I think I like making chai as well, where again, cardamom is so, a nice chai where you've got the different spices that we'll be going on to with black pepper, ginger, cinnamon, but cardamom as well. I think for the milk, it really goes well with milky and milk kind of desserts and drinks and chai in that way. Cardamom, yeah. And there's the beautiful flower, similar to some of the Lamiaceae, and the fruits before before ripening. It looks like, yeah, they're close to the ground. The seed pods there, and there are the seeds in the seed pods. For over 3,000 years, used extensively in Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, imported to Greece from the 4th century, used by Hippocrates, and mentioned by the 17th century English herbalist William Cole, who considered it actually the chief of all seeds, writing that it draweth forth phlegmatic humours from both the head and stomach. Isn't that interesting how he connects those two, the head and stomach, in that way? And it would indeed be, and it is, when they say phlegmatic humours, it is good for phlegm cold. It's the essential oil is also interesting chemistry because it's rich in esters, which makes it very regulating, but also 1,8-cineol. And 1,8-cineol is that same compound in eucalyptus that helps to make it expectorant, you see. So cardamom is really great also, not just as a digestive, but especially where the digestion is maybe the background to having a chronic cough and bronchitis and, respiratory mucus. And a good heart for the heart as well, actually, cardamom. Chi tonic as well of the heart. Yeah, so the seeds, or even they've been called the grains of paradise in the East. And in this way, a cephalic, that's part of it, having 1,8-cineol. Not maybe as pronounced as rosemary or sage, but still neurotonic, and especially where, yeah, there's poor concentration, poor memory, and it can work in that way to help concentration, especially where somebody might, after a meal, they really just want to lie down, they feel heavy-headed. Especially mental fatigue after eating is a good sign, where you definitely need cardamom. Indicated is also for people who get tired and then worry a lot. If they get more tired, they get more overthinking, especially feeling responsible, that kind of earth element nature to worry about others too. And so it can produce some what is called anhedonia, where you lose interest. So it's great for this appetite of life, one of those oils that helps to do that. And I think that is just conveying that sense of earth element satisfaction, really, as well as being, toning the nervous system, improving breathing as well, even. So I think, yeah, it kind of brings together those principles. Mercury, especially through digestion, regulating, but also a little bit, as we've seen, awakening through being a cephalic, but having this sweetness as well, a sense of nourishment, satisfaction, this idea of appetite for life. So it's got some Venus qualities, which Venus also is another big dominating planet of the earth element and of digestion, in fact, as well. So that makes sense in that way, and through its sweetness. Good. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, that's great. Let's have a 7-minute break, shall we? And just and I'll grab a fresh tea and or coffee might have, and then we'll come back at 22, shall we? Okay. And I'll see you in a minute. All right. And we'll go start with Mars. Thank you. Of course, the modern symbol is based on the arrow, but originally it was the cross of matter, the cross dominating the circle of spirit. So originally it was a bit like, I didn't put it there, but a reversal of the Venus symbol. Mars originally was like that, and then it evolved into the arrow. And it's thought the cross being originally reflecting the cross of matter dominating the circle of spirit. Opposite to Venus, which is where the spirit is dominating matter, and that's kind of considered more like naturally harmonious overall, in that way. Mars, the god of war, is all about, I suppose, the dominion of the physical in particular, and I suppose it depends on the perspective you're considering the influence of Mars, but it is part of our physical, I think, our and our vigor, if you like, our physical vigor and our embodiment, even more than that, our physicality, or in sexuality, it's that more erotic, well, different to Venus in the sense, I suppose Venus is more the sensual aspect, and Mars is, more the yang aspect overall. But yeah, different, in different ways, because Mars can also reflect into, a strong intellect as well, because through Aries it governs the head. But coming back to, this thing about the cross of matter over the circle of spirit, I think it's also reflected, I think, in the medical astrology aspect that Mars is kind of a bit like the sun again in a different way to Mercury. Okay. Mercury in a rational way, but Mars in the way of vitality. So it's another thing in the chart to look for that is indicative of not just vitality, but sometimes that tendency to overextend yourself, overwork, and burn out. You often see that, especially where Mars is squaring the moon or the sun, or another planet, maybe Saturn. Yeah, so it can also not just be your willpower, but also burnout, in that sense. Anyway, so as I said, indicative of both desire and conflict. Yeah, it's interesting idea, in a way. But I think that more than I put, for both desire and conflict, yeah. I suppose it plays a protective role together with Saturn as well. So when you need to defend yourself, in that way. Okay. So it's symbolic of force, willpower. And in TCM, that's the water element, but that's also the source of the yang of the body, like the kind of innate vital fire of the body is part of that. And that's really what Mars is also about too, that force and willpower. Self-assertiveness, anger, aggression, as well as the adventurous, impulsive, forthright, determined, forthright, and competitive aspects of our nature. The natal position by house of the planet reflects the area of life we express our enthusiasm and apply our energy and drive. Well, I've got mine in the first house, so I'm not sure. I guess, yeah. And in Scorpios with Scorpio rising. Well, I suppose I'm quite a doer, to put it that way. I don't sit around. And actually, when I've not, I think this is interesting. Mars is quite problematic in my chart, but I am quite Mars-like, I think, in that way of, being quite, I mean, I call this my unretirement, I'm naturally busy. Um, but what I know I was going to say, when I've had periods of feeling not at my best, maybe not technically depressed or at that level of having gone to a doctor or anything, but maybe periods of, after a breakup, usually after breaking up with someone, I go through that period. And I noticed that I think what I lose more than anything is well, just that interest, what is called anhedonia, which is a manifestation of depression separate to low mood, where you just don't feel like doing anything. And that is a characteristic of depression. You just get very lazy, I suppose. And I know when I've gone through periods like that, I just sort of read the news, the Guardian, or the news all day, that kind of thing. So, and that's anhedonia, and I think that reflects my Mars, because my Mars being in my first house when I'm as I should be in general harmony. I know, and like I've been for a long time now, I'm happy to say, naturally busy, and that's my Mars. I've got a lot of natural willpower, but I've got to be careful not to push myself too much, though. But I've noticed, like, when I've been down, like I've said, I've completely lost it, not want to do anything more than just having a low mood. I just, I don't know, would go for a walk every day, not really get on with the things I knew I should be doing. So I guess that's, in a way, it's first house nature, because it's just very intrinsic to me. But anywho, okay, so there we go. And of course, anger is a big theme here as well. Yeah, so it doesn't really relate so much, I think, to the spicy oils, I would say. No, that the spicy oils don't really have anything to do with anger per se on that level. I think anger is actually much better managed by things like Roman chamomile, that help to regulate the chi energy of the liver and etc., especially those, or the citrus as well, for example. So, but we'll see. What the spices are more about, they are very Mars by nature, and they're not going to make you more angry or anything, but they definitely cinnamon, ginger, and black pepper. Of course, they're going to fabulous for your Mars. And actually, I think indirectly, if they if they actually strengthen your Mars and you feel more connected to your vigor and even for men and women, that virile nature within us, that corporeal nature. I think we can be, if we're more confident, which is what they're about. They're very much about making us more confident. These spices that we'll see, the spicy and bold as well, like being our true self. I think the less likely we're to get frustrated and get angry, paradoxically, because they can just, they really are that, they really almost have that Leo energy as well, which is the solar sun energy to be yourself, as well as the Mars vigor and warmth. Okay, so it must excuse me. Well, funnily enough, Venus also has a big influence on the muscles, but especially more their nourishment and tone. The thing with Mars is about the circulation, especially your arterial circulation, which again is exactly we're going to be doing the main aromatic ginger. Are you kidding? Even as a herb, I've been studying because I've had a patient that well, one of the things is hypertension and is Zingiber officinale, it's got lots of research there as well, even as a herb, beneficial for circulation and especially arterial and the heart, even with hypertension too, high blood pressure. Um, yeah, so well, it's supposed to. I don't know. Uh, it is associated with the sexual organs, male sexual organ. I think, but I think both of the planets are interchangeable with respect to the reproductive system, really. But definitely, everywhere blood supply is important, including the head, which of course consumes 25% of our oxygen, and it does rule Aries, which in turn rules the head. And I think interestingly, I've noticed that very often I've seen in charts where Mars is predominant, somebody with strong intellect as well, like a thinker or works academically. So it's not always just somebody who's more of the physical side. Because interestingly, and I think it shows the subtlety of astrology, I've seen it in particular, like people who do research, for example, that kind of thing, or anything of that nature as well, where if you think about it, you do need a lot of Mars energy. You really do. It's quite, you know, you, to do that kind of academic study where you've got to sit in one place and plow through all this research and do all this writing always in one place. You have to have a certain reasonably good constitution, really, and you better make sure you get plenty of physical activity to balance it, and that's what I need to tell myself. Um, so, but often you'll see, I think, people who have that kind of strong minded approach to their work, or they're very motivated, not just in a physical way, but an intellectual way. That's also an influence I've seen of Mars in the chart as well, Okay, so yeah, and interesting, another point in terms of that also reflecting our ability to fight disease as well. And the adrenal glands, of course, make sense because that's our fight or flight endocrine response. So, and Mars is about that action and reaction. It rules plants. I mean, of course, the ones that look very Mars-like by nature with the thorny plants, ones with prickles. Yeah, well, of course, yeah, so barberry, well now, berberine, interestingly, the key compound in barberry does have I was been reading, some very excellent anti-hypertensive action, and anti-diabetic action too. So it's interesting that connection through Mars to the heart. It's also like hawthorn. That's There's tons of good research showing the benefits of hawthorn for the heart in particular. So I think that's an interesting connection through Mars. Cacti, that has some interesting properties, but mainly I think it's the appearance with the spikes. Nettle, well, now interestingly, and of course nettle because of its stinging ability to sting, etc. Yeah, but nettle's also a diuretic, it's also a kidney chi, even kidney yang tonic, and that also makes it quite Mars-like as well, actually. Yeah. And then whenever you have that, I mentioned a fire element, that pungent taste. So pungency, again, in all these different botanicals, caper, coriander. Caper's got some interesting anti-cancer properties. Garlic, of course. I mean, that's a must for high blood pressure whenever you've got arterial plaque. So garlic is a great one for the arteries. Oh boy, one of the best. And again, that's ruled by Mars. Ginseng's very bitter. It's a real bitter digestive and cooling and anti-inflammatory. So that's good for excess Mars. Hops, of course, is, well, I don't know, hops is, I guess it is quite bitter. And again, and of course, relaxing, often used for insomnia or to help promote sleep. Horseradish, mustard. These are like with mustard, of course, has us often what compounds in it that are sulfur base, has a sulfur atom in there. And sulfur, of course, is like totally Mars, in that way as well. So that not just the bitter principle and that pungent principle as well, or that and the sulfur kind of compounds that give those very strong acrid taste and aroma as well, and so forth. Okay. um and Culpeper associated it with basil. Well, basil is really, or basil as we say in England, it is a prime herb, very beneficial for the chi of the heart, and with some um, kind of warming of the heart of the kidney yang as well. So actually good for the willpower, boldness, self-belief, as well. Basil, yeah. So it is, for your willpower and boldness. Basil, definitely. Tarragon. Tarragon again is as an essential oil in particular, it's a very good digestive, but similar to basil because it's also rich in estragol, which is the key compound in particular of the tropical basil. You have to use it kind of in small quantities because estragol does have some carcinogenic potential if too much of it, but anti-cancer, funnily enough, as well. It's got both qualities. But anyway, so that's those two, warming, especially to the tummy. And then again, a lot of those similar that we've already mentioned, like hawthorn. Yeah. Um, okay. Sue, did you want to mention anything in particular about Mars before we look at these spices? Anything I didn't maybe mention in particular?
Well, Japanese barberry. Well, I think of Mars as inflammation.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a lot of the Mars oils are good for good anti-inflammatories. So like I
Yeah.
use them in my pain relief
Oh,
salve.
nice. Yeah.
Like I have a blend of 10 oils and they're just incredibly potent together.
Wow. What ones have you got in the pain blend?
Um, Black pepper, basil, ginger, turmeric, um, peppermint, um, a couple of others.
Nice. Yeah. Wow.
Black pepper is one of my favorites.
Which one?
Black pepper
Oh, okay.
and
Cool.
oregano. I use
Yeah.
all of those oils in
Yeah.
the
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
and then I
Wow.
do a
So
little either grapefruit or something sweeter to just make it smell happy.
yeah. Wow. It sounds great. It sounds very
It smells
powerful.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It so I like it as for anti-inflammatory purposes.
Yeah.
But also you had mentioned the barberry root.
Barberry
So
bark or yeah.
so that I found really helpful for UTIs.
Oh, right. Yes, it is. It is for that too, as well. It's well known, but that's great. It is
Yeah.
well known. It's quite astringent and antibacterial, barberry bark. Yeah. A bit like Oregon grapefruit too. That's got mahonia. That's kind of rich in berberine. Seems to be like a super compound, that one.
I mean, just
Yeah.
smelling it, it's that really beautiful orangey kind of color, and the
Yeah.
smell is super strong,
Yeah.
just cut into the root.
Nice. Do you grow herbs as well in your garden?
Me, a lot of herbs, yeah.
Oh yeah. What do you grow?
Oh, well,
Too many to list.
a
That's
lot.
okay.
Yeah, a lot
No,
of
that's
herbs.
fantastic. Wow.
Tulsi is probably my favorite,
Which
but
one?
Tulsi.
Oh, yeah, no, Tulsi's nice. Definitely. Yeah.
But I've just been starting
Fashion.
to get a lot of my herbs in. But I have like the Ella campaign, and
Oh, you
right
got
now
that.
it's in leaf, and I mean it turns into an enormous plant.
Wow. Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you
They
use the
get very
leaf,
big.
but I've used the root,
Yeah.
like cough syrup.
Oh, lovely. Great. Well, that's perfect, isn't it? Oh, well, you've got a real apothecary there.
But I just picked nettles. Like nettles are just around about finishing up, and I'm actually just drinking a cup of nettle tea here
Oh,
with
wow.
some lemon verbena that I just picked as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Oh,
yeah,
wow. I love lemon verbena. Yeah. That'll make it, add a lot of sweetness to it, won't it?
it's very uplifting, but it also seems to be like I've had a cough from being around a couple of powerful bonfires lately, and I've
Oh,
been
wow.
coughing
Oh,
away
boy.
and trying to just relax and calm my
Yeah.
lungs down a bit. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
have the nettles, and I went and picked a whole basket of them yesterday morning, so I've just been drinking that, and it is really it just like totally calms you down.
Wow, that's amazing. Really, I must try some more. I've got some nettle tea bags.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
fresh
I know it's
nettles, I think
very,
why they're Mars ruled is they're like little hypodermic needles. I mean,
oh,
you touch those nettles and they really hurt.
oh my God, I know. I had a ton in my garden in Norfolk. Yeah, oh, geez. They really proliferated too. Okay, so let's have a look. Thanks. Let's have a look at the spices, okay? And I mean, these are such major medicinal aromatics, culinary, of course, as well as important essential oils. I put antler of fertility. It has always had that ginger, that kind of symbolism in ancient China. And here you can see it. This is modern day China. It's cultivation of ginger. Yeah, so ginger cultivation. And of course, it's in the ginger family, the Zingiberaceae family. Quite stunning red flower heads there, which really kind of show that spicy quality again through the color. Yeah, lovely, lovely flower. It's been used for centuries for both culinary and medicinal purposes. Known as Shenjiang, it's of course very important for colds, especially as what we call a sudorific. That's where you have a flu and very cold and a lot of muscular aching. I've used it, of course, I'm sure you have, to help expel and it that kind of what we call um, external wind in Chinese medicine. This wind, we call it, invades the defensive layer of the body and gets lodged in that defensive layer between the skin and the muscles. And that's that in energetic terms is why we get all achy, especially with that kind of winter flus and cold. And we need to promote that actually open the pores in that traditional way of purging the wind cold viral energy. And you can do it in a more cooling way, like with peppermint, through what is called diaphoresis. But similar action is with ginger, but in a more warming way, opening the pores and promoting this therapeutic sweating, and that's called sudorific, Sudorific, sudorific. Yeah, similar to diaphoretic. But also a major restorative that's kind of its more ability to, purge, especially that cold viral energy. But it's also a great tonic, a restorative, especially of the body's yang energy, that Mars yang energy, associated with the mythical Monkey King, interestingly, fiery tempered trickster, who appeared in this famous novel where the Sun Wukong got famous. One of the first products to travel the spice route from Asia to Europe. So it was made use of in classical times, mentioned by Dioscorides, including as a digestive stimulant. And of course, it's widely used as a natural remedy for nausea, travel sickness, and in energetic terms, are great for the yang energy and kidney yang, which is the source, interestingly, of our willpower. Yeah. As well as our sexual vitality as well, which is also, of course, Mars in nature. So the effect of ginger on the kidneys and the will, that's part of its way of instilling boldness and all those things that go with Mars: virility, willpower, determination. So it's great when it's good for people who not just have maybe a more likely in TCM terms, a pale tongue, a pale swollen tongue. They're more prone to feeling cold in the winter, cold hands and feet. And ginger will help, obviously warm their constitution, promote the circulation, and warm in that way the hands and feet, as well as, if you see in the chart, you might see that Mars has a couple of squares or oppositions to it that would benefit from these spicy aromatics that, really strengthen it and empower that side of us if we need it. And connected, I think, to the sun as well through ginger in that way. Primarily Mars, tonifying the will through kidney yang, and all those other characteristics that we mentioned, its ability to promote arterial circulation. And that also makes it, I think, amplifies the sun, our solar energy as well, through that kind of metabolic fire and the heart yang, which the sun sign is also connected to, and it's not for that deep clinical depression like we might use neroli for, right? But it is good for feeling despondent, definitely when there's chronic low energy and immune susceptibility as well, that a person that can be shown up in the chart. We saw already Mars in the chart may also, if it's under stress with a square or opposition, that can reflect that we need to also use like ginger, an oil like ginger, and these others to reinforce the immune system, their resistance, their resilience as well. Another super medicine And interestingly, I mean, this is both ginger and cinnamon, aren't they? I mean, you could. So I did a monograph on it for a journal, International Journal of Clinical Aromatherapy, and such a ton of research, especially powerful antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic, you name it, anti-cancer. The you do have to bear in mind the difference between the essential oil. That's I'm talking about all those things, especially apply to the herbal use, okay, and all the compounds in the herb. But with the essential oil, you do have the leaf oil, like here we've got the leaf, which the leaf oil, they're both very powerful. There's the bark oil, but the leaf oil is safer, like more for skin application. It's better not to use the bark on the skin because it's rich in cinnamic aldehyde. The leaf oil, though, here is more like, it still have to be careful, but it's not as sensitizing to the skin as potentially the bark oil. The leaf oil, there's the bark, but the leaf oil is more rich in eugenol, which makes it more similar to clove, actually. Even with toothache, it would be similar to clove, in that way. But eugenol and clove, including cinnamon leaf oil, wow, these are super antioxidant. Like they were like the highest rated compounds clove was when they tested all the natural products for their ability to mop up the free radicals that, damage your cells. Anyway, so the cinnamon bark oil, though, even though you have to be careful on the skin, it's beautiful. That's the one that really, the bark oil is, the leaf oil is nice, but it's a bit fresher and it's a bit, it's slightly more clovey. But the bark has got a real deep, sweet wood quality. It's really so sweet. And it's one nice thing, to just have one drop under your tongue in the winter. Oh my God. That's a great tonic for your yang of your whole body. Just one drop. That's called sublingual application. Rather than swallowing it, you can just absorb it through the mucosa of your mouth. Yeah. So, but it's even safer like that than putting it on the skin. Even, that's the bark because of the cinnamic aldehyde. So, as I said, the leaf oil, pungent top note, spicy dry out. That's the base note, rich in eugenol, similar to clove. Then there's the bark oil. It's sweeter, more roundy, more woody. The word cinnamon actually comes from the Latin cinnamomum, which in turn originated from the Hebrew and possibly evolving from kayu manus, meaning sweet wood. That's the Malaysian name, of course, it's where it's native. There's also the French name cannelle, referring to the quills that you can, of the dried bark. It's long been one of the most important of aromatic spices mentioned in the Bible. And of course, a highly important spice, literally spice root commodity. In ancient Egypt, it was also one of those used in embalming. Interestingly, I think it was even I'm pretty sure it was often seen because I've got this book, key book of Dr. Lisa Manish, who wrote Sacred Luxuries, it's called, which is all about the use of aromatics in ancient Egypt. And the recipes, you can see the original recipes that were part of the papyri, And cinnamon is often mentioned, I think, even with kifi, actually. But yeah, often it's interchangeable with cinnamon, cinnamomum cassia, called cassia, which is a kind of a slightly more like cheaper version in a way of cinnamon. According to inscriptions at the Temple of Edfu, okay, oh yeah, here we go. Tishaps was a key ingredient of kifi, which again was both an incense and a medicament burnt at sunrise and sunset, but also used as a kind of therapeutic ointment. And it became part of ointments in ancient Greece, including for a classic cinnamomimium. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that properly. Cinnamomimium. I won't try again. But a costly, fragrant unguent based on cinnamon, cassia, myrrh, and honey, used as a medicament as well as perfume. Yeah, that would be wonderful antibacterial as well for those times. And the honey is a good excipient, actually, you know. In ancient Greece, inscription records, uh, an inscription records offering of cinnamon and cassia to Apollo at the temple of Miletus. According to Herodotus, the phoenix, a symbol of the sun and rebirth, was reputed to build its nest in cinnamon and cassia. I thought that was cool. Now I know, you know, the phoenix is actually coming out of a cinnamon nest even. That's why it's like so full of fire. But but it makes sense. It's all about that regeneration. And I think, you know what? I really think it's directly reflecting cinnamon. I try and buy it, the packets of it, the quills, and I will add it, just pop it in my Vitamix blender for the smoothie in the morning, you know, sometimes, or ginger. But so protective to your DNA. And in that way, I think it makes sense that it would be about longevity and that phoenix energy of rebirth, you know. And here's that longevity. According to Chinese legend, a giant cinnamon tree grew on the moon, and a man cuts it down with an axe. But the injured tree heals and regrows after each blow. So he kept trying to cut it down, but kept growing back. That was this, excuse me, that was this myth of the philosophy of Tao, the Taoism, which is the foundational philosophy underpinning TCM, Chinese medicine, and is all about, you know, treating a problem before it manifests, prevention, regeneration, and longevity. Now, yeah. So this is from Dennis Wilmot, yeah, who wrote Aromatherapy with Chinese Medicine. Sweet and pungent, the sweet flavor of cinnamon takes the pungency of fire, the pungency and fire of yang deep into the body, like especially the earth element, you know, through its sweetness. It recalls solar, I think that should be motions or notions anyways, consecrated to the sun in its inaccessible heights and related to the abode of solar birds, such as the phoenix, a symbol of the spirit, a solar symbol of the spirit. Yeah. It's an explosive physical essence that restores an inclination and vigor for life, as well as courage to the introverted, depressed, and melancholic. Definitely. Very good. No, I think he did mean notions, solar ideas. Yeah, I get it. Concepts. And so it is very solar. The sun, pungent, sweet, invigorating, and in, you know, especially we say in TCM, the heart yang. The yang is that warming, energizing principle, helping to circulate the blood. But Mars, of course, we're looking at Mars at the moment. I think both really, and we're looking at, especially we looked at the Mars aspect very much, and it really is excellent for reinforcing the will, and even a bit Pluto, which is like the higher vibration of Mars, if you like, through its ability to transform and renew, as symbolized, for example, with Phoenix. But really, also good, remember, these oils like cinnamon, if there's any disharmony between Sun and Mars, that's where it can really be excellent too. In a chart, Sun square Mars or opposition cinnamon. Black pepper, excuse me, god of fire. And that's in Ayurveda, that digestive fire, Agni, very important for healthy digestion. So, yeah, I mean, of course we use it, don't we, very much as a culinary, savory, really, yeah, table, condiment. Prepare nigrum. It goes from green fruits through to red and then mature. Well, the thing is that black pepper, or when they harvest the green fruits and dry them in the sun, that's how they go black. When they soak them in water, that's how you get white pepper. And then, of course, there's also red pepper, peppercorn. Red pepper is coming from the mature pepper fruits, as you can see there. But otherwise, otherwise more common, of course, is black pepper, which again is produced through drying in the sun. I think it's like 2 weeks. The green peppercorns, immature, unripe pepper fruits. So they turn black. That's how you get the black pepper, as opposed to the pepper that you get, the red pepper from the mature. Black pepper is the king of spices. It's the most widely traded spice in the world. It's got this kind of sweet, dry pungency going on. The black pepper of commerce, I've mentioned this just now, the mature berries of the tropical perennial native to Southeast India. And this is a picture of the Malabar coast, which was the center of the cultivation and trade of pepper from ancient times. And I thought I'd include this because it's even been used to make amulets. Wearing charms or amulets belongs to the attempts of preventative significance. Oh, excuse me. Meaning that that you could wear plants to ward off maybe negative energies, or even, of course, if you think of times of the plague, using plants for their anti-infective properties. But one of them is black pepper. Yeah. Making like even kind of botanical jewelry, really, So I thought that was an interesting connection in that way, together with other botanicals like hawthorn and so forth and cloves. But overall, yeah, I think coming back now, definitely a lot of Mars energy with black pepper, especially again through the kidney yang, the will, really reinforcing the will through stoking that digestive fire through its action on the kidney energy, diuretic, great for lack of determination, and chronic lethargy when there's chilliness as well, when you want that warming influence. But I think, again, like cinnamon, the sun comes in as well, I think, because of it, for all those same reasons as a general tonic, a cardio tonic, and of course, really uplifting the spirit as well in that way. That's our solar nature. So, yeah, I would shift the umbrella a bit, but I think we've reached time anyway. And unless there's any questions there, we managed to fit all those in that I wanted to cover. And I think, what do we do next time? Let's see. Just go back there to our schedule. And I suspect we're going to be moving on to Venus, which we are. So a big family we'll be doing next time of especially the sweet herbaceous, herbs and oils. Yeah, including marjoram and basil we'll do properly, of course, etc. Good. So, well, unless there's any final questions or points, I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
I just wanted to mention that if anybody wants to see black pepper growing, there's a farm called the Spice Farm in Belize. It's a beautiful, amazing place, and they grow lots of black pepper there, amongst many other things.
Wow.
Yeah.
You visited there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very amazing place.
And I remember, maybe what I'll do is because I think you very kindly sent some photos of Rose from Bolivia, didn't you?
Uh-huh.
Let me send those. Is that okay? I'll send
Yeah.
those, a link to those with this recording. God, well, that sounds like paradise, Belize. What's the best way to get there, Belize? Do you
You
fly direct?
fly into Belize City, and then you would just drive there, somehow get there by car, I guess.
Yeah. Where is it again? Remind me, Belize, the location when Central
Central
America.
America. Yeah. It's on the Caribbean coast, east of Guatemala,
Oh, right. Okay. I think I remember now. Yeah.
south of Mexico,
Right.
south of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yucatan. You can go from the Yucatan down into Belize.
Oh, right. Okay. Nice. It's one area I've not because of Bailey being on the other side of the Atlantic, except Brazil a couple of times and Mexico. But yeah, maybe hopefully at some point. Anyway, thank you. Unless there's any other final questions, any other questions or points? And okay. Well, thanks everyone
Thank you.
for being so attentive. And yeah, well, and I look forward to seeing you. And then we'll be getting on to looking at charts as well once we get through all the planets and aromatics. Okay. Okay. Well,
Okay.
we'll start to look at charts along the way anyway. All right. Take care then. See you next
Thank
Bye,
time.
you.
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye bye.